Well, good evening. Thanks for joining me tonight for the informational forum on the Lake Lois Pacific Avenue annexation. If you're here tonight, you probably got one of our postcards in the mail, and thanks for joining us to get a little bit more information about what this annexation will entail. So my name is Ryan Andrews. I'm the planning manager with the City of Lacey in the Community and Economic Development Department. And my job here at the City of Lacey is to process annexations, which we've been doing quite a few of lately, including this one that we'll talk about here tonight. So the purpose of this meeting is to provide you with some additional information and be able to ask any questions that you might have. I'm going to go over a little bit, an overview of the annexation and timelines, talk a little bit about some of the financial implications, some taxes and those kinds of things when it comes to the annexation and how it might affect you. Answer some questions about changes in services related especially to streets and utilities. And then talk a little bit more about next steps and what it looks like in terms of when this might be effective and when changes might occur to bring this area into Lacey. You could you can ask questions at any time throughout the forum. You can use that Q&A function on the webinar, use that chat box to ask any questions. And at the end, we'll have additional time. I'll be able to answer any questions you might have. I also want to mention that this forum will be available on the city's YouTube channel. It's being recorded right now, and we'll have it available up on the city's YouTube channel in the near future. So if you have to leave at any time, feel free to just go to YouTube, search up City of Lacey, and you'll be able to find it there. If there's maybe a neighbor or somebody else that would want to look at it, it's a way to be able to share and look at the video later. So with that, let's get started. So a little bit about the timeline. I wanted to kind of first start out how did we get here? Annexation has been a priority of the city council. As I mentioned, we've done several of them lately. And so this is really a city council driven process. The city council is the decision-making body. I, as a staff member, don't have any decision-making. I'm just basically sharing information. So the city council initiated this annexation using what's called the petition method. So it's a 60% petition back on September 2nd, and they did that utilizing existing power of attorney agreements. So for the area of the annexation, there's a number of agreements that property owners have signed in the past that have given power of attorney to the city for extension of utilities. And what that power of attorney does is it grants the city authority to act in their place when it comes to annexation. So we're using those annexation power of attorney agreements to basically act in place of the property owners. In addition, the city also has a number of properties in this area. And so the city is actually probably the largest by area property owner in this annexation. So the city is able to sign on to the annexation petition since we have so much property in that area as well. So the next step after tonight is going to be a public hearing, which is scheduled for December 2nd at 4:00 p.m. in front of the Lacey City Council. Oral comments can be provided at that meeting if you'd like to attend, or you can submit written comments. Those written comments, you can email those directly to me. There's my email address on your screen there. It's randrews@ci.lacey.wa.us. And that is the next step in this process. From there, we would expect that the city council would forward this on to the next step, which would be the Thurston County Boundary Review Board. So the Thurston County Boundary Review Board is a Thurston County board made up of, I believe, 3 members that looks at all annexations, and they look at the boundaries of annexations and the kind of the fairness issues and the revenue issues associated with those. And that requires a 45-day process for them to review. It looks like at this point, we'll probably be sending that to them in mid-December. So that takes a 45-day period for them to provide their decision. If their decision comes back favorable to the city, then it looks like our anticipated adoption date of this annexation would be February 17th of 2022. That means it would be effective right around that date. So that's when this area would be brought into the city limits and be officially part of Lacey. The next step after that would be we have to conduct a door-to-door census. And so that means we have to go around to each dwelling unit in the annexation area and find out how many people live within each dwelling. So that's going to take us a couple months to complete, and that's going to be done probably in the March-April timeframe, with everything wrapped up by May 1st of 2022. A little bit more about that census. We have to do that mostly for accurately assessing population for state shared revenue purposes. So we have to provide an accurate count of how many people live in this area so that we can get an accurate count of how many people live in our city limits. So on your screen is a map showing the proposed annexation area. So the proposed area to be annexed is within that red outline. It goes from Carpenter Road on the west side to Kinwood Street on the east side, from the Aldea Glen subdivision on the north down to the Karen Fraser Woodland Trail to the south. So you'll notice that the green there, that's the green on the map is already properties in Lacey. The purple is within unincorporated Thurston County, including this area to be annexed. And so you can see it's a really illogical boundary, and it's kind of a peninsula, if you will, of property that's surrounded on essentially three sides by city limits. So the council priority has been to get rid of some of these irregular boundary issues. Additionally, we do have a number of city properties in this area, including the property around Lake Lois. You can see Lake Lois on the screen there. And we actually own property now on the south side of Pacific Avenue too, where you see Goose Pond, that property, and the property to the east of that. Those are both owned by the city of Lacey now as well. So the 2021 assessed value of all these properties is a little over $15 million. A lot of it, though, is, as I mentioned, is owned by the city. There are also a couple of churches within this area. Both the city and the churches are exempt from the payment of property taxes. So this area doesn't really benefit the city much in terms of assessed value, in terms of taxes. It's really more of a boundary issue. We really wouldn't make, that we're not doing, there's not valuable commercial property or anything like that that the city stands to gain. There's a total of about 46 dwelling units in the area to be annexed, as well as about 100 residents. That's kind of our estimate, but once we do that census, we'll know for sure. And as I mentioned, yeah, this is really to incorporate city-owned property and square off that illogical boundary by moving it all the way out to the eastern boundary of Kinwood Street. Here's an aerial photograph of the area to be annexed. So I just wanted to kind of point out a couple of landmarks so you can kind of better see where this proposal would annex. So first of all, Lake Lois, has kind of two sides to it, I guess. There's the small western side, which is on the western side of Carpenter Road. That's already in the city limits. So this would incorporate the eastern side. So Lake Lois and the Lake Lois habitat area that's already a city park. Here's Kinwood Street on the eastern boundary. So as I mentioned, the new, if the annexation is successful, the new boundary becomes the eastern portion, eastern edge of the right of way at Kinwood. So the stoplight at Kinwood and Pacific would be annexed into the city, and that would be maintained by the city of Lacey. This is the Safeway that's at Carpenter and Pacific. So you can see that's just outside of the annexation area, but the reason it's outside is because it's already in the Lacey city limits. Here's the Lacey Community Center, and then the Senior Center would just be a little bit to the right of this. So again, city-owned property already in the city limits. So just a little bit to kind of get your bearings there. Here's a zoning map of the area to be annexed. So you'll see mostly kind of 3 or 4 colors. The light tan, yellow, beige-ish colors, those all are residential zones. So we have 3 residential zones that are a part of the annexation: low density 0 to 4 and low density 3 to 6 units per acre. So that means when those properties develop, they can be developed at either between 0 and 4 or 3 to 6 units per acre. And then the kind of the darker tan, that's at Kenwood Court, that's moderate density residential. So that is 8 to 16 units per acre. And then the bright green, you'll see that has an OS-I on it. That is open space institutional, and that is around the Lake Lois habitat area. So that is essentially a park designation that kind of puts that in a holding pattern and doesn't allow development there associated with that park. It's a sensitive area around Lake Lois. Here's another map I wanted to share with you, which shows 2 things. It shows, number one, the power of attorney agreements that we do have. So between the power of attorney agreements and our Lacey owned properties, we have about $9.25 million of assessed value. I think I mentioned the overall assessed value there is about 14 million. And what we need is more than 60% to move forward with the annexation. So we do have that. So those properties that have existing power of attorney agreements are pink on this map. So you can see where those are. As well, we have the City of Lacey properties in green on the north side of Pacific Avenue around Lake Lois. One thing that's not shown that hasn't been updated yet are those properties that we do hold south of Pacific Avenue, as I mentioned, around Goose Pond, and to the east of that, those are all currently owned by Lacey. Okay, so that's what I had to share with you for maps. Now let's get into our kind of tax fees and those kinds of things. That's a very common question that we get with annexations, and a common misperception is that people's property taxes will go up. And so we want to make sure that we kind of show our work and what this means in terms of property taxes. So what you're seeing on the screen here is a number of numbers, and these numbers are taxing rates based on a $350,000 assessed value home in Lacey versus one that's in incorporated Thurston County. And we know everybody's assessed value is different. This is just kind of giving you an average $350,000 assessed value home in Lacey. The first thing I would do is point you to kind of the middle, the light blue areas, which is the bulk of this slide. You'll notice that you pay the same rate, whether you're in the city or in the unincorporated county, for a lot of our various different taxing districts. So this includes Lacey Fire District 3, Medic 1, North Thurston Public Schools, Port of Olympia, on down to the Timberland Regional Library. So you'll notice that irregardless of living in the city limits of Lacey or in unincorporated Thurston County, a lot of the taxes you pay are the same. What's not the same are 2 different taxes that are shown in green and yellow. So let's start with the green section. The first green one at the top is the Fire District 3 excess levy. So you would be going from Fire District 3 within Thurston County to within Fire District 3 within the city of Lacey. So essentially that Fire District 3 excess levy goes away. So that $31.72 that you would pay would go away, as well as the county road levy that's at the bottom of that column of about $387.83. That would go away as well. Since you would no longer be located in Thurston County, those levies go away. So that's on the downside. On the upside, so where your taxes would increase, or where you would see different assessments than what you do now, first of all, would be the City of Lacey excess rate that's at the upper right in the yellow. The first, that is 2 different levies. That one is related to a parks levy that was passed a number of years ago, as well as a fire department levy back when the city was not yet part of Fire District 3. So that totals about $50 and change. The good news with this one is in 2022, that rate's actually going to go down. So those fire stations that were built in about 2001 or 2002 that you see around town, including the headquarters on Fran Street, that bond has all been paid off by the city as of the end of this year. So that rate is going to go down by about a third. So you'd probably be paying maybe about $15, $16 instead of the current $51.49. The second one there is City of Lacey's levy. So we become a taxing district in our property tax district. That would be about $336.97. Let's go back one more. You'll notice at the bottom, and I'll go over this in a little bit more detail here, the total levy, the very bottom column, that actually shows the work there, that average property taxes would go down by about $31 every year upon annexation into the city. So something that people don't necessarily consider, but it's important to note because it is a tax and it is a tax increase for those people that live in the city, is that the county does not charge a utility tax, whereas the city of Lacey does charge a tax on all of your utilities. So the left-hand column, you'll see the county rate for most utilities, excluding water. They do not charge a utility tax for, whereas the city of Lacey does. And so most of our rates are at 6%. So what we've done is we've calculated, and this is on a monthly, the annual amount on the right-hand side. But what we've done is on the left-hand column, done a monthly estimate of what people's bills look like. So for example, you pay $60 in your electric bill, $120 a month for natural gas, and on down to your telephone, that's $150 a month. And we've calculated based on those estimates a 6% rate. And basically what that shows at the bottom is about $376.26 per year that you would pay in utility tax. One thing that we are showing as well is that you are required to pay a utility tax on wastewater, which is sewer, and not everybody in this area has sewer. So this only would apply if you're connected to sewer, this additional $45.32. If you're on a septic system, obviously that's not a City of Lacey or a public utility, and so you're not required to pay that, or you wouldn't pay that. So overall, what does this look like? Well, as we mentioned, in your property taxes, you'd be going down for about $30 per year. Your utility tax would be going up about $270 per year. So you can see what the total taxes are there on an annual basis, making for a difference of about $281.56 per year in additional taxes you would pay. You'll notice that we have a star on that, and at the bottom, this would increase by about $23.50 per month. But that last sentence is an important one, which is most people in this annexation area are on city water. If you're on city water and outside of our city limits, your water bill actually will be reduced by 20%, because we do charge a 20% surcharge associated with our water utility to people outside of the city limits. And so that 20% surcharge would go away. So really, you might, if you have $100 water bill per month and that's got a 20% surcharge on it, there's $20 right there that you're getting reduced. So, for most people, I think it's really going to be pretty close to being a wash between being in the city of Lacey or being within Thurston County. All right, so let's talk a little bit about our services, as I have an ambulance going right by my door here that you can probably hear. So how will annexation affect law enforcement and fire protection services? First of all, let's talk about fire. So fire and EMS, Medic 1, will remain the same upon annexation. So Lacey Fire District 3 is currently your fire district, and that would not change upon annexation. What would change is related to law enforcement, and this is that upon annexation, the City of Lacey Police Department would provide police service instead of a Thurston County Sheriff's deputy. The good news is that we do have more City of Lacey police officers per capita in this area than the Thurston County Sheriff's Deputy, than the Thurston County Sheriff's Office does. So that means our response times are much, much quicker than Thurston County Sheriff. If there was a priority one call, if somebody's breaking into your home or something like that, chances are you're going to get a City of Lacey police officer way faster than you would ever get a Thurston County Sheriff's Deputy. So I see this as being a real distinct advantage. If I was living in the area, that it would be an advantage for residents here. It's just the timeliness of the service that you could get from the Lacey Police Department. If I'm annexed, will I have to switch garbage services? Nope. Garbage services, I believe, already provided by Pacific Disposal. That does not change upon annexation. If you have, second question there, if I have a home-based business, how will this affect it? If you have a legally established home occupation in this area that already complies with regulations, this will be permitted in the city after annexation, so that does not change. The only difference is that you'd be required to pay an initial license fee when you got a City of Lacey business license, which is $25 for the first year, and then an annual renewal after that of $10 per year. The third question there, will annexation affect school district boundaries? No, it will not. You all are already located in the North Thurston Public Schools school district boundary. That annexation does not change that. So it doesn't change, school boundaries or anything like that. Talk a little bit about streets and street lights. So will the city take over our private streets upon annexation? So if there are any private streets in the area, the answer to this question is no. The city does not assume responsibility to maintain or take over private streets upon annexation. So, but this is private streets. This is, things like private driveways, private lanes, anything that somebody is already privately maintaining, we do not take those over. But what we do take over, and what the City of Lacey does assume responsibility for, is maintaining and operating all public streets. So if it's public, if the county has already been maintaining it, we will maintain it upon annexation. So for example, Pacific Avenue in the area to be annexed, Lake Lois Drive, those internal streets around Lake Lois, we'll maintain those. Kenwood Street, we'll maintain those. So, anything that's already public, we will maintain. And also we'll maintain any public stormwater facility associated with these public streets. So if there is a public stormwater system, a catch basin, or something like that, we will maintain that as well, associated with that public street. Question about street lights, what happens with those? Some homeowners associations and some property owners are required to pay their own bills for their street lights. If that's the case, the city, if it's along a public street, will coordinate transfer of ownership and payment of these streetlights to the City of Lacey. So private individuals might be paying for those now in the county. The city's policy is that we actually own and maintain and pay for those, pay those bills. So that's good news for people that might own those streetlights right now. Again, just like on the private street side, if you've got a private street light on a private street, we would not take over ownership and maintenance or ownership and financial responsibilities for those. So there's a big question about folks that might have an existing septic system. And if I do have an existing septic system, will the city require me to hook up to the sewer system as a condition of annexation? Or, people, this is a common question that we get. And I think it's a common misperception that somehow annexation requires people to hook up to a city sewer if one is available. And the answer to that is no. Annexation into the city limits will not result in the city mandating that property owners connect to the city sewer system. What does require connection to the city sewer is if your septic system has failed and a sewer main is within 200 feet, then you would be required to connect. It's important to note, though, that this would occur if your home is located within Thurston County or the city. So regardless of annexation, the rule is if your septic fails and you're within 200 feet, you've got to connect. And that rule is in place today as a resident of Thurston County, same as if it would be if you were annexed into the city. So this doesn't really change. If your septic system fails and your house is not within 200 feet of a city sewer main, then you may be allowed to repair the septic system based on Thurston County health approval. So the city does not, we deal in city utilities, city sewer. We do not deal with, we do not oversee septic systems. So even if you're annexed, if you have an existing septic system and that fails, let's say there's no sewer line within 200 feet, you'd be dealing with Thurston County environmental health on that. So, if you do regular inspections on your septic system and those kinds of things, those are all coordinated through Thurston County environmental health and does not change as a result of annexation. So I think that about brings me to the end of the information that I had to share with you tonight. As I mentioned earlier, the next step in this process is a public hearing on December 2nd at 4:00 p.m. with the Lacey City Council. So if you've got concerns that you want the council to hear about the annexation, this is where you'd be able to do that. You can provide oral comments directly at the meeting that's going to be held on December 2nd. If you'd rather submit those comments in writing, I'd gladly accept those and take those to the city council. There's my email again on your screen if you'd like to submit that. Here's my contact information too. If the next step, I get, maybe this is a good segue, is, the next step in this is to go through the Q&A portion of the forum. If you do have a question, you feel free to type that into the Q&A box and I'll do the best I can to be able to answer that. If there are other questions, maybe that you have specifically about your own property or something that didn't get brought up that maybe you want to think about and get answered later, there's my contact information on the screen there. My phone number is 360-412-3190 and my email address is randrews@ci.lacey.wa.us. Feel free to get a hold of me and I'll do the best I can to answer any questions you might have. So with that, we'll dive into the Q&A. I'll take a look at the questions here and see where we go from here. So first question is, how do I opt out if I don't want to be annexed? So the question is, if I don't want to be annexed, how do I not be annexed? And at this point, there's no ability to opt out there. If you have concerns, if you don't want to be annexed, I would certainly make those concerns, comments clear to the city council at that public hearing that's coming up on December 2nd. The council, again, city staff, us as we're not the decision makers, the council is. If you don't want to be annexed, the city council is the right one to air that to, and they can take the comments under advisement when they are making their decision. At this point, there's really a limited ability to be able to opt out, and really the only way that that could happen is if the council decided to not move forward with the annexation. Another question is, can I get a copy of the presentation? Certainly, if you want to email me, again, my email address, randrews@ci.lacey.wa.us. I'd be happy to send you a copy of this presentation. Again, it's going to be posted up on our YouTube page, on our City of Lacey YouTube page, if you want to take a look at that again in the future. Another question here. It says, Kenwood Court is a private road and there are 18 residents. This currently has a blue street sign, not a green street sign. Will you take over Kenwood Court? If Kenwood Court is private, and if it does have a blue street sign, which it says it does, typically a blue street sign is a great indicator that it is indeed a private street. We will not take over Kenwood Court. So I hope that was clear in the presentation. If it's already a private street, that's not something that the city takes over. The city does take over anything that's public. If the residents are wanting to talk about how do you turn a private street into a public street where the city might maintain that. That's a different conversation, and one that would be probably best to have with somebody in our public works department. There are options if the private street meets the same requirements as a public street to potentially transfer ownership of that, but that is above and beyond this annexation. So again, maybe something you can reach out to our public works folks about if that's something you're interested in doing. Question here, how do we see a copy of the power of attorney related to our property? Get a hold of me. Actually, let's back up a slide here. And so again, you can see my contact information. There we go. So again, my contact information is on the screen there. If you do have questions, comments, concerns, want to see anything else like a power of attorney agreement, this would be the way to be able to do it, is to get a hold of me, and I'd be happy to provide you with anything that I have. We do have a copy of every power of attorney agreement. So I'd be happy to provide you with anything that you might have. Another way to be able to do that is outside of the city is to actually go to a title company, and a title company will be able to pull up anything that's been recorded on your property and be able to pull up a power of attorney agreement on a property. So you can go to a title company if you didn't want to come see us. Be another way to do that. Let's see, another question. So after this takes place, our HOA will no longer pay for our street lights in Kenwood Court. P.S. Kenwood Court doesn't have a blue sign, it's green. So if Kenwood Court, so I guess this is something we'll need to look into. If Kenwood Court's a public street, that is something that would be publicly maintained. And if their street sign or street lights that the HOA is paying on Kenwood Court, paying the bill for, yes, that's correct, then the city of Lacey would take that over. If it's private, private stays private. If it's public, the city of Lacey takes that over. So maybe something I can kind of reach out to folks about and look into a little bit more is the status of Kenwood Court and whether or not it's a private or a public street. Be happy to look into that. So I've come to the end of the questions. I'm happy to hang out for another minute or two, just in case anybody else has any other questions. Again, my contact information is up on the screen. Be happy to talk to anybody else that might have questions outside of the forum, but I'll just give another minute or so for any other questions. Okay, so I see another comment here from a resident on Kenwood Court that it is a public street and they pay for the street lights. So yeah, if that confirms things, then yeah, that the city of Lacey will take over the street maintenance and then also the street lighting and the payment for those. And that is, that the reason I bring it up in the presentation is that is a very common theme within. So this is, like I said, we've done a number of annexations lately. And this is a pretty common theme within developments within Thurston County, that they're required to pay their street lights. So that's why we bring it up, and that's why we want to make everything consistent, because in Lacey, if you've got an HOA, the city pays for those street lights. So we want to make sure that people that are annexed are treated the same as anybody that's been here, within the city. So our policy is to make sure that all those things are paid for by the city. Give it another minute if there's anybody else that has any other questions. Otherwise, all right. Well, again, thank you for attending the forum tonight. Really appreciate it. I hope this was informative. I hope you got your questions answered. If not, feel free to get a hold of me. I'd be happy to talk to you some more. And like I mentioned, the next step in this, if you'd like, is to attend that public hearing on December 2nd with the city council. So with that, I don't see any other questions coming through. So wish you a good evening and good night. And thanks for joining me tonight. Bye.